Good morning, 7 East.
Happy Friday, people. We made it. Another week down in distance learning, and not too many more to go. We are on the air, and as we are approaching the end of the school year, we are also approaching the end of the Civil War. Yesterday, you had the Gettysburg assignment, and you can still work on that today if you're still going through it. There was a lot of stuff to look at the slideshow. But today we're going to be moving on. We're going to talk about the end of Gettysburg and the famous Gettysburg Address. But before that, our daily countdown. This tradition I'm keeping up just to cope with the winding down clock of the school year. So first things first, our schedule. It is now Friday. It is Free Lepre Radio 043, not 044, because there was not one 2 days ago. Vicksburg, I'm actually going to push that back to Monday because that relates to Monday's assignment. There's no new assignment today. You still have Gettysburg to do. Civil War Quizlet Live 2, new and improved at 1 o'clock. Thinking there's going to be, at this point, unless I add some more terms, it won't be more than 25. So we could do that. We only have 2 more chances to play this at least, or maybe 3, who knows. It all depends on how many days of school left. Speaking of which, 16 is a number of the day, because it is a number you can get your driver's license at, and it is also because allegedly that is the number of days of school remaining. 16, it may be less than that. I don't really know. At this point, does it really matter? Because the weeks matter, especially at this time of year when the weather is nice. I'm sure everyone wants to get out there and enjoy the sun. But as it is, let's continue with social studies. So, second item on our agenda, the Gettysburg Address. So to start off, I just have a few facts, things that you may know or may not know about the Gettysburg Address. Given on November 19th, 1863 by President Lincoln. Not the day after the battle, which would have been July 4th. In case you did that part of the assignment incorrectly, one of the answers was the day after the battle. It was not. It was months afterwards. And the reason he gave the speech was to commemorate the battle and dedicate a cemetery for those who died in the battle for the Union. And you can see some of that cemetery in the Remember the Titans clip from the Gettysburg slideshow. People were actually very surprised at how short it was, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be surprised too. When you think of a presidential speech, you might think of the State of the Union that can go on for like a half hour or more. This is so short it can be memorized, and in fact many students do memorize it. Of course, we're not going to do that this year, but in the past other students have memorized the speech as kind of a public speaking project in 7th grade. Public opinion on the speech was divided at the time. Some people reportedly didn't even actually like it. Some people thought that it was just, it was too short. Others, on the other hand, went over the top thinking it was amazing. But over time, the opinion has generally become that it is one of the greatest speeches in American history, and we're going to try to figure out why that is. So this is one of the copies of the Gettysburg Address, and as you can see, it isn't very long. It fits on one long piece of paper, and the words are spaced out pretty much a lot. The part in red is the introduction. People seem to know the introduction, but nothing else beyond that. 7 years ago. Well, a score is actually a word that also means a group of 20 years. So when he's saying 7 years ago, it means 87 years ago. What that exactly refers to? Let's take a look. Because I have the text. Actually, wait. There we go. Okay, I went ahead of myself. I have the text of the Gettysburg Address here. I'm going to read it out loud and comment on it to try to break it down for you in case it's confusing, even though it's written in more modern English than stuff like the Declaration of Independence. So the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So 87 years ago means 87. He's referring to the founding of the country, 1776. It'll be 87 years ago from this point. And he is saying that America's original promise was liberty, freedom, and the idea that everyone is created equal. And he's reminding the audience of that. And he continues, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, so any nation that believes in freedom, any nation that believes in equality, can long endure or survive. So he's saying this civil war is a test to see if a free country that believes in liberty and equality can actually survive. We are met on a great battlefield of that war, meaning Gettysburg. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field, the cemetery, as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation, the United States, might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. He's saying that we should honor the dead who died to keep this country together. But he continues and kind of contradicts himself a little bit. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, which means to make something holy. We cannot hallow this ground, which means the same thing. But brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract or take away. So he's saying the fact that they died here for this cause is important enough. There's nothing we can say here that'll make this any more important than it is. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here. Ironically, it is remembered. But it can never forget what they did here, meaning the soldiers who won the battle. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus so far nobly advanced. For the unfinished work, he's talking about finishing the war. He said it's up to us now to honor them and their sacrifice by finishing this war and winning, keeping this country together. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. Meaning that we now need to pay them back by basically being more dedicated. They gave their lives, meaning the last full measure of devotion, to this cause, and now we have to do the same. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, meaning they didn't die for nothing, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, meaning a country without slavery, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth or be destroyed. So it's a very short speech, but he's giving really the mission statement for the Union. We are here to prove to the world that a democratic country that believes in freedom and equality can last. A lot of people thought that America would not last when it started. It's not even been 100 years since 1776, and America's already in civil war. For many countries, especially in Europe, that were monarchies, they were saying, look, told you so. You can't have a democratic country. They don't work. Look what happened in the United States. They barely lasted 100 years before they had a civil war. Lincoln is saying, look, we need to prove to the world that democracy can work, that freedom can work. And that's one of the reasons why this speech is considered so powerful. And even though at the time people may have been kind of conflicted about it, with the outcome of the war and then Lincoln's eventual assassination, it's taken on new meaning and new symbolism. And you can look on YouTube and there's many cases of people reciting the Gettysburg Address in very like Shakespearean language and music in the background. It's one of those celebrated speeches in American history. I wanted to commemorate it in another way, and that was from my childhood. So I'm going to go back a slide. There was this great show that I used to watch after school when I was a kid in grade school called The Animaniacs. Very old show. It's from the 90s. And basically, it was from Warner Brothers, and they would have these characters, Yakko, Wacko, and Doth, the Warner Brothers and Warner's sister, and they would sometimes go back in time at different points, and they even did it with Thomas Jefferson. But there was this episode I always remember where they go back in time, and they inspire President Lincoln to write the Gettysburg Address. And I have that clip on Classroom. I find it kind of amusing. So you can check that out if you'd like to as well. Of course, it's not factual, even though that would be pretty cool if these three random creatures inspired our 16th president to write his most famous speech. I'm not sure. But even in that video, they have some pretty cool Civil War animation, even some of the songs we talked about in the North versus South presentation. That does it for this episode. I wanted to keep it short, like the Gettysburg Address. I'm also going to include another video or two on Classroom. One of them is going to be a straightforward reading of it by Jeff Daniels, the actor who played Chamberlain in the Gettysburg clips in the slideshow yesterday. So you can take a look at that if you'd like to. But that's going to do it for this week. Finish up that Gettysburg assignment. Make sure you turn everything in. We're getting down to the end. Let's try to stay focused. And this will be me, Mr. Lepre, signing off from this edition of Free Lepre Radio.